They never actually plan to wake up thinking only about you, fully occupied by your presence. That is the first thing you need to clearly understand. Most people are not ready to face what they have pushed deep inside for a long time, using effort and control just to keep it buried. But emotions do not stay quiet forever. Even when someone looks calm on the outside, something can already be moving inside them. At first it feels small, almost invisible, like nothing is happening. But slowly, it grows into something they can no longer ignore. You might have noticed it too, that slight change in their behavior, that subtle shift in energy, like something unspoken started building under their calm face. It was never just about distance or confusion. It was about recognition, a deeper awareness rising inside them that they could not fully explain or deny. And if you are still here, stay with me, because this is where it gets more intense. People do not welcome feelings when they first appear. They resist them. They question them from every angle. They hide them under logic, pride, and old emotional defenses built over years, because what they feel does not match the version of themselves they are trying to protect every day. This creates inner conflict, and that is where the real struggle begins. The stronger the feeling becomes, the harder they push it away. But pushing it away does not remove it. It only builds pressure inside. That pressure does not disappear. It grows quietly, and anything that keeps building inside eventually finds a way out, no matter how controlled the person tries to stay. Most people only realize this when it is already affecting their thoughts and behavior without them noticing. What they ignored yesterday slowly becomes something that shapes their today. That is why some moments feel different without any clear reason. It is not because something new suddenly started, but because something inside them finally shifted. Not in a loud way, not in a dramatic way, but in a breaking point that happens silently, and you were not there to see it fully unfold. But it happened. If you are still watching, you already know this feeling. In that quiet moment, their usual distractions stop working. Your presence returns, not as a simple memory, but as something stronger that refuses to fade. The mind tries to explain it away. It says it is coincidence, it is nothing, it will pass. But deep down, it knows that explanation is not enough, because you do not struggle to erase something that has no meaning. You do not fight something that does not matter. Every attempt to push it away only makes it return stronger, clearer, harder to ignore. And this is where control becomes the real issue. It is not just about feelings, it is about losing control over how they respond to those feelings. They want to stay in command of themselves, of their emotions, of their choices. But something about you breaks that internal structure they rely on. You become the one thing they cannot easily categorize or manage, and that creates discomfort they were not prepared for. So they pull back, they become inconsistent, not because the feeling is weak, but because it is too strong to handle easily. Avoidance is not the absence of emotion, it is the proof of it. Inside them, a silent conflict continues. One part of them tries to stay logical and safe. The other part keeps bringing you back into focus when everything becomes quiet. And slowly, your presence does not fade like they hoped. It becomes sharper instead, more present, more persistent. Stay with this, because this is the turning point. When something moves from denial into acceptance, it no longer asks for permission to exist. It simply stays. And once the mind reaches that stage, there is no easy way to go back to how things were before. They now have to think about what this feeling really means for their future, how it could reshape their life, what it demands from them, and most importantly, what they might lose if they keep pretending it is not there. Emotions of this level never stay flat or harmless for long. They grow, they expand, they move forward quietly but steadily, like something that refuses to stop once it has started. Right now, they are standing at the edge of that pressure, trying to hold on to control while everything inside them keeps shifting in ways they did not plan for. And if you are still watching this unfold, you already sense it too. This was never only about one person outside of them. It was always about what you awakened inside them, the deeper parts they usually keep locked away. That inner process is still going on. It has not finished. They thought that once they finally admitted the truth, things would calm down, that everything would settle, but that is not what happened. Instead, the storm simply became visible. It got a name, and once something inside the mind is clearly named, it becomes much harder to avoid or escape. Awareness does not reduce emotion, it sharpens it. It turns something vague into something real, something they can no longer push aside so easily. That new reality started pressing on them almost immediately. There is no pretending anymore that nothing is happening or that it will disappear on its own. Every thought now feels heavier. Every memory carries meaning. Every quiet moment feels charged with something they cannot fully explain. And when the mind can no longer deny what is real, it begins to split in two directions. One side moves closer, drawn toward what they feel. The other side pulls back, trying to protect them from losing control. Neither side is willing to give up, and that is where the real struggle begins. It is not simple confusion anymore. It is internal division, desire on one side, self-protection on the other, and both are growing stronger at the same time, because what they feel has gone far beyond surface attraction. It is starting to form something deeper, something closer to attachment, and attachment always feels risky to someone who depends on control to feel safe. If you are still here, you can almost feel the tension in this pattern. The more real it becomes, the more their mind tries to analyze it, break it down, label it, reduce it to something easier. But it does not fit into simple explanations anymore. That is why they pause. That is why they overthink even the smallest things. Things that once felt natural now feel loaded with meaning and consequence, because anything that touches something real inside them starts to feel like a threat to their stability, their freedom, their identity. And here is the contradiction they cannot escape. You do not resist something that has no value. You only struggle with what matters. So now they are stuck between two forces. One pulls them closer, one pushes them away, and both operate at full strength. This creates a kind of mental pressure that does not stop. It follows them into ordinary moments, into silence, into distraction, even into rest. And sometimes it shows up in very small ways. A pause in speech, a shift in tone, a sudden thought they did not expect. If you have ever noticed that kind of shift, you already understand how the mind can return to one person again and again without permission. It does not follow logic or timing. It follows emotion. And once something reaches that level, it stops being optional in their inner world. It becomes something they have to face. And that is the question they keep avoiding. Why you? Why this? Why now? And the harder they try to answer it logically, the less it makes sense. Because this was never built on convenience. It was never just a passing moment. It comes from something deeper, something they cannot fully control or explain, no matter how much they try. And every delay comes with its own cost that has to be faced later. Emotions that are pushed down do not disappear without leaving a trace behind. They slowly transform into inner pressure, restless thoughts, and constant mental noise that becomes harder to silence with time. Recently, that inner noise has grown stronger for them in everyday life. It no longer stays limited to emotions only. It starts affecting how they think, how they behave, and even small physical reactions they cannot fully control. Sometimes it shows in reduced focus, sudden mood shifts, and reactions that feel bigger than the situation itself. Out of nowhere, something unprocessed rises from within, asking for attention they are not ready to give yet. And if you are still watching closely, you can almost feel that shift happening. Type yes if you understand this level of inner pressure they are carrying right now. They are closer to a breaking point than they want to admit. Something inside them is beginning to fracture. Not on the outside where everything still looks controlled, but deep within where no performance can hide what is real anymore. Underneath the surface, the mind stops pretending. Truth starts existing without permission. Repression always has a hidden price, and now that price is starting to show. The longer something real is pushed away, the stronger it returns later, often in ways that feel harder to control. What once felt manageable now feels intrusive. What once felt distant now feels close and immediate. And what they once tried to ignore now feels undeniable inside their system. When the subconscious can no longer stay quiet, it does not negotiate gently. It breaks through in sudden thoughts, emotional spikes, and reactions they do not fully understand in the moment. Even small situations can trigger unusually strong responses without a clear reason. Their focus drops the moment your presence enters their mind without warning. And this is where the shift becomes real. You are no longer just someone outside their life. You have started existing inside their inner world, and that changes everything completely. External things can be avoided or replaced easily, but inner experiences follow them everywhere, into silence, into rest, into moments where they are alone with their thoughts. Their resistance is starting to weaken because the main question is no longer whether the feeling exists. That part is already clear to them deep down. The real question now is what they will do about it. And that is where fear begins, because action means exposure. It means vulnerability. It means losing control over how they present themselves. Most people avoid exactly this stage for as long as they can. You cannot fully control something that has already changed you from the inside. And this has changed them in ways they cannot reverse easily. It is not surface level anymore. It has reached deeper into how they understand connection, emotion, and even your absence in daily life. Your absence feels louder than your presence ever did, and that silence is what keeps building pressure inside them. It returns in cycles, stronger each time, refusing to fade away completely. Every attempt to move forward brings them back to the same realization that nothing else feels quite the same anymore. That comparison slowly weakens their internal defenses because everything else starts to feel less meaningful in contrast. And that forces a truth they tried hard to avoid. This connection does not simply fade or get replaced. A quiet pressure starts growing inside them, even if it is not visible on the outside. It builds slowly, steadily, without dramatic signs. And when something cannot be replaced, the fear of losing it becomes very real, sometimes stronger than the fear of never having had it at all. Their behavior begins to shift in subtle ways they do not fully understand yet. They move between hesitation and sudden impulses, between pulling back and wanting to move closer. One part of them wants resolution, wants relief, wants to end the inner noise by facing what is real, but another part insists on safety, distance, and control. This creates an exhausting internal loop that drains their mental energy every day. It is no longer just emotional confusion. It has become something deeper, a conflict between identity and desire. The version of them that avoids cannot fully exist with the version that feels so strongly anymore. Something has to give eventually. And now they are beginning to notice their own avoidance patterns more clearly than before. The excuses feel less convincing. The distance feels less natural. Even silence starts to feel like self-pressure. They are running out of places to hide from what they already know inside. And once that awareness is fully formed, it does not allow them to return to ignorance again. Something inside has already changed permanently, and now it is moving toward a point where it must resolve itself one way or another. But it cannot keep going under constant inner contradiction without eventually giving way under pressure. They feel like they are slowly coming apart inside because the truth has now surrounded them completely, leaving no easy path out anymore. There is no real escape left in logic, no new distraction that can fully replace what is already inside them, and no extra distance that can erase it. The final phase of this long suppression is not more silence, but direct facing of what they carry within. And that moment is getting closer whether they feel prepared for it or not. As the subconscious no longer waits for approval, it starts pushing for alignment between inner emotion and outer behavior, which at the moment are still in a painful mismatch. This gap creates strong mental tension that forces a clear decision without delay. Once the mind reaches this level, it stops accepting half answers or temporary relief. It no longer settles back into comfort the way it used to. It pushes forward, even when the conscious mind tries to resist. It feels like something inside is moving them out of their old emotional defenses, step by step, without asking. A clear direction is forming inside them now, growing from a quiet but unavoidable realization they can no longer fully ignore. It is not loud, it is not dramatic, but it is constant. Every excuse they used earlier now feels weak and unconvincing. Every delay feels self-made. Every attempt to push this feeling away starts to feel like they are going against their own inner truth. People can carry fear and still function. They can carry pain and still continue. But they cannot keep fighting against what they already know deep down forever without consequences building up inside. Eventually, a choice becomes unavoidable, and they are now reaching that point where avoiding the truth costs more than facing it honestly. Their resistance is not breaking suddenly, but fading slowly, not because they fully decided to let go, but because they can no longer find solid reasons to keep holding the same distance they once relied on. If this feels familiar, stay with it, because this is where awareness starts to change everything. And at this stage, illusions of control begin to fall apart. The idea that time would erase this feeling no longer holds. Instead, time has only made it clearer, heavier, and harder to ignore. There is nowhere left to hide inside their own mind except direct awareness. Now, even inaction feels heavier than risk. They are no longer trying to reduce what they feel just to make it easier to handle. Silence no longer feels natural. Distance no longer feels neutral. Everything begins to feel charged with meaning, and this creates a constant inner pull that does not stop easily. They are caught between fear and desire, but both are now merging into a single, unavoidable realization. Clarity has not brought peace. It has brought urgency. It has brought restlessness. It has brought a pressure that keeps pushing them toward action, whether they are ready or not. And what they feel is no longer uncertain or small. It is solid enough that ignoring it would feel like losing a part of themselves. When something suppressed reaches this point, it does not fade quietly. It returns with force because it was never truly gone. It was only held back, and anything held back for too long eventually demands to be seen. That return does not ask for permission. It simply arrives. And when it does, everything they tried to hold together inside starts moving toward resolution one way or another. But it cannot keep continuing under this constant inner contradiction without eventually giving way under the pressure building inside them. It feels like something is slowly splitting them from within, not in a visible way, but in thoughts, reactions, and silent moments where everything becomes too loud in their head. The truth has now surrounded their entire inner world, leaving no clear exit through logic, no clean escape through distraction, and no real relief through distance anymore. Every direction they try to take brings them back to the same point again. The final stage of this long suppression is not more silence or avoidance, but direct confrontation with what has already formed inside them. And that confrontation is no longer far away. It is approaching steadily, whether they feel ready or not, whether they accept it or resist it. As the subconscious stops waiting for permission, it begins pushing for alignment between what they feel inside and what they show outside. Right now, that alignment does not exist, and that gap creates a constant psychological strain. It is like holding two opposite forces in the same mind at the same time, both pulling in different directions without pause. This creates pressure that does not go away with sleep, distraction, or effort. It follows them quietly into daily life, into ordinary moments, into silence where there should be rest. And once the mind reaches this stage, it stops accepting half decisions. It refuses to return to the old comfort zone the way it used to. Something inside begins to move them forward, even when they try to hold themselves back. It is not dramatic, it is not loud, but it is steady, and that steadiness is what makes it unavoidable. Stay with this, because this is the point where internal change becomes irreversible. A clear path is forming inside them now, not through sudden realization, but through a slow and unavoidable awareness they can no longer fully dismiss. Every excuse they once relied on now feels thin and unconvincing. Every delay feels self-created. Every attempt to push the feeling away starts to feel like they are pushing against their own inner truth. People can carry fear and still function in daily life. They can carry confusion and still move forward. But they cannot continue fighting against what they already know deep down forever without something breaking inside. Eventually, a decision becomes unavoidable, and they are reaching that threshold where avoiding the truth starts to cost more than facing it directly. Their resistance is not collapsing in one moment, but fading step by step, not because they fully surrendered, but because they can no longer justify the same emotional distance they once depended on. And now the illusions that once supported their control begin to fall apart quietly. The belief that time would erase this feeling no longer works. Instead, time has made everything sharper, clearer, and heavier than before. There is no mental space left where they can fully hide from it anymore. Even inaction now feels heavier than movement. Even silence feels charged with meaning. Even distance feels unnatural. This creates a continuous inner pressure that does not stop. It keeps returning in cycles, each time a little stronger, a little harder to ignore. Fear and desire no longer feel separate. They begin to merge into one single internal pull that keeps pushing them toward a choice they are not fully prepared to make. And clarity, instead of calming them, creates urgency, restlessness, a sense that something inside can no longer stay frozen in place. When something is suppressed for too long, it does not disappear, it accumulates. And when it finally reaches a certain point, it stops asking for permission and starts demanding recognition. That return is not gentle, it is not negotiable, it simply arrives. And when it does, everything they tried to keep balanced inside begins shifting toward resolution, one way or another, whether they resist it or not.